All right, so let's get started with the chapter and where psychology comes from. For a lot of people, I know it's a little difficult to get excited about history and philosophy, but for us it's real important that we talk about these topics because this first chapter informs the rest of the semester. Things that we're interested in really all come back to this first period, this first chapter. So, how many of you were able to download the note guides? Did anybody do that? All right, you're going to be so happy at the end of this because you get to follow along. Other people are going to be crying, sad. So sad. So what is psychology? Well, psychology is the scientific study of the mind, the brain, and behavior. And there's a lot to unpack in that. Your textbook, or I like to call it your hymnal, has this great cartoon in it, where we have behavior going on. The cat's giving the mouse a free ride. Why is he giving you that nice ride? So it's not going to end well for the mouse, is my guess. But there are three terms in there that we need to know about. And the first is scientific. And I think I also got this out of your hymnal. But so we get information all the time, right? And in this case, we have the Weekly World News telling us about the world's smartest ape going to college. And it has a picture right here. And so how much trust can we put in this? Who said none? This is Weekly World News. How can you not put trust in it? What's wrong with this? Yeah, I'm thinking brown belt at best. I'm sorry? I just need you to speak up. It's fine. I mean, my comments, I just can't hear them. Yeah, I love the Weekly World News. We used to get it all the time. I'm not sure if they're still in business. I'm going to take issue on a couple points here, not just the maybe brown belt for the baby, but clearly that's not the world's smartest ape. If they had, say, Stephen Hawking's picture there, he would be probably the smartest ape. Because, we are apes. We are primates. We're in the ape family. So this particular one has the intelligence of about a 2-year-old. We have to get to 2 years old before we catch up with the rest of the apes. So I don't think this is good. It's probably not a good source of information. So quality of information is going to be very important to us, where information comes from. And that gets us into this idea of what it means to have scientific study. And science is not something like chemistry. Science is not something like physics. Those are areas of study. Like psychology, it's an area of study. Science is a mode of thought. It's a way of thinking. Science is what separates astronomy from astrology. It's what separates chemistry from alchemy. It's what separates psychology from, all kinds of superstitious stuff. So science is a mode of thought. It's a way of being very careful in our thinking. And it's a mode of thought. It involves hypotheses, which are what? Who can tell me what a hypothesis is? All right, that's kind of the standard high school, educated guess. And that's okay. That's an okay way of thinking about it. Generally, they're a little bit stronger than a guess. We usually have a little bit better reasoning than that. But it's a testable question is what it is. So if I say I have a hypothesis that if I take this beautiful new clicker and let go that it will float in space, that's a hypothesis. It's a testable thing. If I say that you are driven by lust for your parent of the opposite sex like Freud did, that's not a hypothesis because there's no way I can think of to test that. And that's where Freud really gets sideways, is none of his assertions were testable. So hypotheses are testable questions. Science also includes control of variables. And that's important because we want to make sure that only the thing that we think is acting on the process and nothing else is causing change. So here's a little thought for you. As you increase the number of churches in a community, this is true, by the way, I'm not making this up, crime increases. So, should I conclude that churches cause crime? Why not? Correlation's not causation. What does that mean? And you're absolutely right. That's a good answer. Okay, so what else are we looking for as a possibility here?
The population is increasing, and there's more amount of people, there's going to be more amount of churches.
That's exactly what turns out to be going on. The population's increasing. That's why we're getting more churches. That's why we're getting more crime. But more to our point, there's a third variable. It's a third variable. We didn't control for it. Other times, there are more than three, and very often we get what we call multiple causation. So we want to control all the variables we can in order to have more certainty of what we're talking about. And I love, when we get to the correlations, we're going to have so much fun with that. For example, did you know that the likelihood that you'll be the victim of violence increases with the number of floors in the building you live in? So what we should do, obviously, is not build any apartments over 2 floors tall, right? All kinds of good stuff. So, but that's true. I mean, it's a fact that violence is related to that. So that's control of variables, elimination of alternative explanations. As global warming increases, so does piracy. That's right. As global temperatures go up, so does piracy. Therefore, I conclude that global warming causes piracy. There may be other explanations that are better. We'll come back to that. So we want to eliminate alternative explanations. So that's science. The other really important piece to this is to remember that science is evidence-based. Science is evidence-based. We have to watch things occur, not just guess what occurs, not just rely on common sense, but test. And this makes science a beautiful thing because science is self-correcting. It doesn't matter if I'm the world's most renowned psychologist, which turns out I'm not, but if I were, it would not be sufficient for me to stand up in front of the class and say, here's how the world works. It doesn't work that way. I have to produce evidence, or at least be able to produce the evidence. And if one of you could think up an experiment to disprove what I told you, you could do that. So it's not an authority-based thing. It's an evidence-based thing. So science is wonderful for that reason. The mind. Here's a tricky one. What's a mind? It's harder to come up with this than you would think. Because we want good, well, that's a big black dot right there. I'll have to fix that. So the mind, for our purposes, and this is kind of a loosey-goosey definition. So if you take me in a class later and I say the mind's something different, just be quiet about it. For our purposes, the mind is going to be the contents and processes of subjective experience, our sensations, thoughts, and emotions. And then my little emergency clause at the bottom to save myself is all mental processes. So we got some hints of this in the first lecture when we were talking about how much of our mental processing never reaches the level of consciousness. And so that includes that bit.